Hello and welcome to Strange Stories. It's great to have you here. We are all about sharing stories of near-death experiences from around the world in the hopes of bringing some light and inspiration to your day. Our daily videos offer a glimpse into what lies beyond this life, and we believe that they can help us all appreciate the gift of life a little bit more. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to stay up to date on all of our latest videos. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue to grow. And to our returning viewers, welcome back. We're thrilled to have you with us again. So go ahead, grab a cozy blanket, get comfy, and join us for today's incredible near-death experience story.
I see an outline of angels in the light, and the music is coming from the angels. But this light is God. It is Source, or whatever name you want to give it. That is where we originate. That is the definition of unconditional love. Hello, my name is Dr. Lottie Valentine, and I've been asked to tell you about my two near-death experiences. My first near-death experience occurred in 1992, shortly after the birth of my third child, and I had two children already. They were two boys, 6 and 3.5 years old. In 1992, I gave birth to my daughter at the end of June, and I gave birth in the middle of two earthquakes, a 7.4 and a 7.2, and the earthquakes were so severe that I thought I was going to die right then and there, and my work was actually halted due to the magnitude of the earthquake. We also lost all power in the hospital. After that, my labor resumed. Then I had my first hemorrhage after giving birth. Then again, who doesn't? And I was yelling to my husband, "Take the baby! Take the baby! I'm unable to hold the baby." They massaged my uterus and put me on an IV drip, and I stayed in the hospital for an extra day. And then I was told that everything looked fine and that I could go home. I started bleeding again 10 days later, and these blood clots were enormous, the size of a man's fist. And then I went to the ER, where they did a manual inspection and said, "Well, nothing much is happening right now. It's possible that a second lining emerged." There was no blood work done. There had been no ultrasound, and they escorted me away. The following day, the same thing occurred. We called the hospital after another hemorrhage occurred, and it was decided that I should see a doctor the next morning in California, where we lived at the time. So I went to the doctor the next morning, and it was another manual inspection. No lab work, no ultrasound, and he explained that it could have been two linings that came out. Later that day, I had another hemorrhage, so we went back to the ER, and they did another manual inspection, and they said, "Well, we'll keep you for observation." And I was lying on this table in the ER when they shut the door, and there wasn't even a bell to ring. And now I'm bleeding again as I'm lying on this table. And by chance, this nurse opens the door, checks on me, and sees how much I've been bleeding. So I hear the call over the loudspeaker, "OBGYN to the ER, OBGYN to the ER." And I'm just thinking, well, at least they'll figure out what's wrong with me this time. So within a minute, the middle-aged physician bursts into my room, accompanied by a younger physician. They also perform a manual inspection. And I'm bleeding again while they're doing this manual inspection. And I try to stand up and tell the doctor that I'm not feeling well. And he just pushes me back down onto the table, tilting it. So my gaze is drawn to the ground. My feet are rising to the ceiling. And I have a nurse on my left attempting to insert an IV, and a nurse on my right quoting my blood pressure. And right now, I just feel like I'm falling. So imagine jumping out of an airplane without a parachute and you're just free falling towards the ground. That was the sensation I was experiencing within myself. And as I lie there on this table, all I can think about is what is taking this nurse so long. But I was already in a state of shock at this point. When your veins begin to collapse, it becomes extremely difficult to access those veins. And the nurse to my right is taking my blood pressure as it drops. At one point, she yells, 50/15, hurry! As a result, I can no longer sustain a heart rate. And I knew I was dying shortly after she yelled that, which was very different from that earthquake experience when I thought I was going to die. I knew I was going to die. And I had no faith in the afterlife or any religions. I didn't believe in God, Jesus, angels, or anything else, despite the fact that I was raised a Lutheran and was confirmed when I was 14, but I didn't believe in anything. So as I lie on this table, I realize I'm dying. What should I do? I begged God to save my life because there was nothing else I could do but hope there was a God out there who could help me at this point. So I begged God to spare my life, and I tell them that I have 3 children under the age of 6. They require a mother, and I was pulled out of my body and found myself floating about 3 or 5 feet outside of my body. And because I'm not in my body, there's no pain and only unconditional love. On the other side, there's no time. As a result, I have simultaneous access to the past, present, and future. But there's also a sense that I belong to the body on the table, almost as if you're holding onto a balloon and you're the balloon, but you're holding onto a string, so you belong down there, or you belong in your house or apartment, but you stepped outside. I had just stepped outside and had the sensation, and then I'm pulled back into my body in a matter of seconds. The transfer of the soul, leaving your body and then coming back in, is instantaneous. People frequently ask me if I leave through the crown, do you exit via the chest? And to be honest, I have no idea because it happened so quickly. I was inside the body for 1 millisecond, and then I was outside for the next. As a result, I'm drawn back into my body. My sister-in-law was in the left corner of my ceiling, and I could hear her the next day in the hospital. And she assured him that everything would be fine. So communication with the spirit world began the day after my first NDE and gradually progressed over the years. As a result of this near-death experience and blood loss, I became extremely ill. And I had bone marrow suppression, which is when your platelets, white blood cells, and red blood cells are all suppressed. And 2 years later, while I'm still trying to heal, I have another near-death experience. And the second near-death experience was very different from the first one. And I always joke that because they saved me so quickly, I didn't get the full impact of my first near-death experience. So I had to do it again to get all the messages that I needed. So in the second experience, I'm pulled out of my body once more. And this time, I'm just tumbling through darkness, almost like a Star Wars spaceship while you're tumbling through space. And I arrive at what I call the mid-station. And I call it the mid-station because I was aware that there were floors above me and floors beneath me. Almost like going into a skyscraper with 100 floors and pushing the button on the 50th floor and getting off on the 50th floor. You know there are floors above you and floors below you. But as I approach this location, I hear the most beautiful music, more beautiful than any music created on Earth. And I tried getting a synthesizer with over 200 sounds. And I sat at the synthesizer for days trying to find any sound that sounded like what I heard. And the best way to describe the music is as a choir of angels. And as I'm in this place, and I'm wondering where the music is coming from, I see a log cabin on my right. So I turn to the right, thinking the music is coming from the log cabin. So I open the door and look inside, but it's completely empty. So I turn to the left, and there's a mirror image of the same log cabin I saw on the right, but this time, it's on my left. I open the door again and look inside, but it's empty. But then, I become aware of this growing white light. It's almost as if a fog is moving in and enveloping you. But it's the whitest, brightest light you've ever seen or felt. And this light is nothing more than pure, unconditional love, and as I turn around and look into this light, I notice an outline of angels. And the music is being provided by the angels. But this light is God, Source, or whatever you want to call it. That is where we originate. That is the definition of unconditional love. We are made of the same light. This light is within each of us. When we die, we return to this light, this pure unconditional love. But then I notice 2 spirit guides, one on the right communicating with the other on the diagonal to the left in front of me. And he says, "What is she doing here? She can't be here. She has to go back." And I said, No, wait a second. How can I be outside my body and still be me? And the spirit guide on my left says, "Well, if I told you, you wouldn't remember, but you will remember this." And then it was as if I was standing on the moon looking down on the earth from outer space. But around the earth, there was a silvery, glittery, what I call a fishnet, or a fishnet that tends to be diamond-shaped. And so I'm looking down at this fishnet around the earth, and the spirit guide says, "Everything on earth is connected to each other, and everything on earth is connected up to this grid." And with that message, I was returned to earth, and it completely changed my life. And after 12 years of that, I no longer questioned any of the messages I received in 2004. So that set me on a path to becoming a doctor. And I went to medical school at the age of 54 because the spirit world told me I had to do it. I hope you enjoyed my story and that it brings you peace and healing on your journey through this lifetime. Thank you incredibly much.